was alone in my kitchen that morning. The kettle was whistling, and I had just settled into the chair by the window. The one where I read the paper every day. The one with the view of the garden my husband once promised he'd help me build. That promise was 41 years old now. And that husband? He vanished without a word when I was 35. My name is Rose. And I thought I'd buried every piece of my past. Until the knock. A slow, hollow knock on the front door. I didn't rush to it. Most knocks at my age come from delivery men or church volunteers. But when I opened that door, everything around me froze. It was him. Harlan. My husband. Older, frielier, but unmistakably him. He didn't say hello. Didn't smile. He just whispered. Rose, it's me. My knees almost gave out. I hadn't heard that voice in 4 decades, but my body recognized it instantly. I stood there in shock, gripping the door frame for balance. I wanted to shut the door. I wanted to slap him. I wanted to pull him inside and demand an explanation. But all I could do was say, "How?" He walked in like a ghost returning home. Like nothing had changed. Like we weren't 41 years older, 41 years broken. We sat at the kitchen table. My hands were trembling as I poured us tea. Silence hung between us like a fog. Finally, I looked him in the eyes and asked the question I had buried in my heart for 4 decades. Why did you leave me? He took a long sip, set the cup down, and said the strangest words. I left to protect you. Protect me? I felt the old rage stir in my bones. Protect me from what? From our daughters who cried every night? From the debt I had to shoulder alone? From the shame of being abandoned without answers? But I didn't yell. I needed to hear his lie or his truth. So I sat quietly. And he began to explain. He said that in the summer of 1982, just days before he disappeared, a man had come into the garage where he worked. A stranger driving a black car with no plates. Said he needed engine work. And that money wasn't a problem. Harlan took the job. But that car wasn't normal. There were hidden compartments. Strange wiring. Military-grade parts. He said he found a locked case under the back seat. Inside was something that looked like a hard drive, and blueprints with government stamps. When he confronted the man about it, the stranger smiled. And told him if he valued his family, he'd forget he ever saw it. But Harlan was stubborn. He kept digging. That's when the threat started. Notes slipped under the garage door. A car following him home. Our dog poisoned. He said he didn't tell me because he thought he could handle it. But the final straw came 3 days before he vanished. He was ambushed at the shop, forced into a van, and told he had 2 choices. Disappear forever, or watch us die. I didn't know what to say. It sounded insane. Like something from a cheap spy movie. But the look in his eyes. That broken, haunted look. Didn't feel like a story. He said he fled that night. Left everything behind. Changed his name. Moved from town to town. Never staying long, never contacting anyone. Always looking over his shoulder. He said he watched us from a distance for a few years. Sent anonymous money orders to help, but never dared show his face. Until now. Because he was dying. Cancer had taken over. Doctors gave him months. He said he had to see me before the end. I wanted to hate him. I really did. But hate is heavy and I was too old to carry it anymore. So I asked him, why now? After everything? Why tell me this? He looked me in the eye and said, because there's something else you need to know. About our daughter Ella. Those words hit me like a freight train. There's something you need to know. About our daughter Ella. Asterisk. My throat tightened. I clutched my teacup, afraid of what was coming. Ella was our youngest, barely 6 when he disappeared. She barely remembered his voice, his face, the way he used to hum old jazz records while fixing things in the shed. She cried for him for years. Drew him pictures. Used to stare out the window, asking if Daddy would come home today. Eventually, she stopped asking. She grew up quiet, kind but distant. moved away at 19 and rarely called. It hurt. But I didn't blame her. Now Harlan was here, 41 years later, and her name was on his lips. Did you ever wonder why she left so young? He asked. I felt my stomach twist. I had wondered, of course. But she was independent, stubborn like him. I assumed she needed space, freedom, something I couldn't give after years of grief. He leaned forward, his eyes watery. I saw her. A year before she left. She came looking for me. I was speechless. He said Ella had tracked him down after finding one of the old money orders he'd sent anonymously. She was just 18. She hired someone to trace it. She showed up at a post office where he'd been living under a new name, Glenn Pierce. Said she wanted answers. He tried to send her away. Told her he was dangerous to be around. But she refused. So he gave her the same story he gave me, about the black car, the threats, the men in suits. But Ella, she didn't believe it. She thought he was lying to cover up a new life. So she left. But not before giving him something, a flash drive. She said it had something important on it, Harlan whispered. Said if I ever decided to stop hiding, I should show it to you. He reached into his coat and pulled it out, a small scratched flash drive, covered in dust. I stared at it. What's on it? I asked. He looked ashamed. I never opened it. I was too afraid. Afraid it would force me to stop running. That night, after he went to sleep in the guest room, the room that used to be his, I sat alone in the living room with that flash drive clutched in my palm. I didn't have a computer at home anymore. I barely knew how to work one. But the next morning I took it to the library. I logged into an old desktop computer, plugged it in, and waited. There was only one file. A video. It opened to a shaky recording, grainy, filmed in secret. At first I didn't recognize what I was seeing. A dark warehouse. Metal shelves. Fluorescent lights flickering. Then voices. Men talking in hushed tones. We can't let him talk. He's a liability. Agreed. You handle the mechanic. I'll take care of the family. My heart nearly stopped. The mechanic. That was Harlan. And the family. That was us. The camera zoomed in on two men in suits. One had a scar on his cheek. The other held a photo in his hand. A photo of me and the girls. I want this tied up in the next 48 hours, the scarred one said. If he won't cooperate, make it look like a robbery. No loose ends. My skin turned cold. It was real. It wasn't just a story. They had planned to hurt us. And Harlan had left to save us. I sat there in the library, tears silently rolling down my cheeks, surrounded by strangers scrolling social media and reading the news, unaware that my life had just shattered and reformed in one terrible moment. Ella had discovered the truth, and she tried to protect us too. She left. Not because she was angry, but because she was scared. She was trying to keep me safe just like her father did. And she never told me. When I got home, I found Harlan in the garden. He was kneeling beside the overgrown roses, trimming them with shaking hands. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I whispered from behind him. He didn't turn around. Just said, because I didn't think I deserved your forgiveness. I knelt beside him. You don't, I said honestly. But you do deserve the truth to be known. He looked at me then, really looked. And I saw it. The man I fell in love with. The man I buried in my heart. We have to find her, I said. He nodded. The next morning, we began searching for Ella. 41 years of silence, scattered across states and decades. And now we were chasing shadows. I still had her old phone number, but it hadn't worked in years. I tried calling her college. No records. I tried old friends. None of them had heard from her in over a decade. Harlan, despite his illness, became laser-focused. He contacted a private investigator, someone he trusted from his years in hiding. The man's name was Walter, and he worked fast. 2 days later, Walter called back. He'd found something. An address. In a small coastal town 3 states away. A woman named Elena Rose. The age matched. So did the photo from her driver's license. I packed a bag. Harlan insisted on coming too, even though the doctors had warned him not to travel. I left once, he said. I won't leave again. So we drove. Hours on the road. Barely speaking. Just the hum of the highway and the quiet, shared fear in the car. What if she refused to see us? When we reached the town, the sun was setting. It was quiet, peaceful. Birds chirped, children played. The kind of place you'd go to disappear, or start over. We pulled up in front of a small, sea-weathered bookstore called Asterisk Second Chances. Asterisk. Walter had said she owned it. My heart pounded as we stepped inside. A bell jingled. Shelves lined with old novels. The scent of paper and salt water in the air. And then there she was. Behind the counter. She didn't see us at first. She was helping a customer, smiling politely, her voice soft. And even after all these years, I would have known her anywhere. Ella. When she looked up and saw us, time stopped. Her smile vanished. Her body stiffened. The customer must have felt the shift because he left quickly. And then it was just us, a triangle of memories, regret, and unfinished truths. Ella, I whispered. Her eyes welled up immediately. She looked at me, then at Harlan. And then she walked out from behind the counter. But instead of hugging us, she slapped him. Hard. You don't get to come back, she snapped through tears. You don't get to walk in here like a ghost from the grave. Harlan didn't react. He just stood there and took it. I know, he said quietly. She turned to me. You knew. I shook my head. He just came back. 3 days ago. She looked at both of us, her jaw trembling, then stormed toward the back room. I followed her. We sat in the back of her store for nearly an hour. No yelling. Just 3 broken people, trying to put language to 4 decades of pain. She told me she'd left not out of anger, but fear. After seeing those men in the warehouse and realizing how deep the conspiracy went, she knew if she stayed close to me, she might put me in danger. So she changed her name, disappeared, built a life from scratch. She never married, never had children. I didn't want to pass the curse on, she said softly. I cried. So did she. We held each other tightly, the kind of hug that says I'm sorry, I missed you, and you're safe now all at once. Harlan stayed silent most of the time, until she turned to him and asked, Why now? I'm dying, he said. And I didn't want to leave this world with the truth still buried. She nodded slowly, then stood. She didn't hug him, but she said, I'm not ready to forgive you, but I'm glad you told me. It wasn't reconciliation, but it was a beginning. We stayed in that town for 3 days. Ella let us sleep in a small guest house she kept behind the bookstore. It had peeling paint, a broken lamp, and a creaky bed, but it was perfect. It felt peaceful, the kind of peace I hadn't felt in years. Every morning, we'd meet Ella at the bookstore for tea. She was still guarded around Harlan, never too close, never too personal. But something had softened. Maybe just a crack, but it was enough. The 3 of us would sit on the old wicker chairs outside the store, sipping tea and watching the ocean. Talking. Not about the past. Just the present. Books. Music. The weather. Safe things. Until one afternoon, Harlan asked, Do you want to know everything? Ella was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. So he told her. He told her the full story, the real story, of what happened all those years ago. How he had accidentally discovered a ring of illegal government contractors, siphoning money through the repair shop where he worked. How he tried to report it. How they threatened him. How they showed him pictures of his wife and his daughters. He was given 2 options. Disappear. Or die, and let his family die too. So he ran. With help from someone on the inside who owed him a favor. He vanished under a new name, lived in the shadows, sent untraceable money orders to us every month. Everything I did, he said, was to protect you. Ella listened. Her arms crossed, her face unreadable. And when he finished, she looked him in the eye and said, "I believe you." Later that night, I found her alone on the beach behind the house. She was staring at the waves, arms wrapped tightly around herself. "You okay?" I asked. She nodded, then whispered, "I don't know what to feel. I hated him for so long. And now I feel sorry for him." I said nothing, because I understood. Some pain doesn't go away with words. Some wounds never close, they just scar over. "I want to take him somewhere," she said suddenly. "Before it's too late." "Where?" She smiled slightly. "Home." The next morning we packed up and drove, not to our home, but to the house where Harlan had grown up. It was 2 towns over, abandoned now, but still standing. He hadn't seen it in over 50 years. When we arrived, Harlan stepped out of the car slowly. His body was frail, but he stood tall, almost like a young man again. He touched the old porch rail, ran his fingers across the doorframe, looked out at the overgrown garden. "I used to think I'd die without ever seeing this place again," he said. We spent hours there. Ella took photos. He walked every room. And then, in the living room, he collapsed. It wasn't sudden. It wasn't violent. He just sat down, laid his head back, and closed his eyes. "I'm tired," he said softly. I held his hand. Ella sat beside him, tears silently falling. And then, with one final breath, Harlan whispered, "I'm sorry. And I love you both." And he was gone. We buried him in the field behind the house, beneath a willow tree he used to climb as a boy. Ella found an old photo of him as a child, and placed it in a small wooden frame beside the grave. No gravstone. No funeral. Just us. And the sound of wind through the trees. After Harlan's death, Ella and I didn't speak much for a few days. We stayed in the house, cooked simple meals, listened to the rain. Grief is strange. It doesn't follow a pattern. Sometimes it's loud. Sometimes it's silent. But we both felt it. Not just the loss of Harlan, but the loss of everything he had taken when he vanished. Time. Memories. The lives we could have lived. One night, as we sat by the window watching lightning dance on the horizon, Ella asked me something that surprised me. "Do you hate him?" I thought for a moment. I did. For years. I hated him for breaking our family, for leaving without a word. "And now?" she asked. I took a deep breath. "Now? I don't know. Pity him. I think he carried a burden none of us will ever understand. And I think he died trying to make it right." Ella nadie. And for the first time I saw something soften in her completely. "I used to imagine hurting him," she said, eyes still fixed on the storm. "Screaming at him. Making him feel what I felt. But when I saw him, really saw him, all I wanted to do was understand." A few days later, we packed up the last of our things and locked the house behind us. Ella handed me an envelope. I found this in one of Harlan's old notebooks. It was addressed to me. Inside was a letter, written in shaky handwriting. "My Rose, I know I can never undo the hurt I caused. I know I missed every birthday, every holiday, every moment I should have been by your side. I watched you grow old through newspapers and word of mouth. I prayed you would forget me. But part of me always hoped you hadn't. I left because I was a coward, but I stayed away because I loved you. If you're reading this, then I was lucky enough to see you again. I hope you've found peace. I hope you've forgiven yourself. And I hope somehow you can forgive me too. Yours always, Harlan." I wept. Not for what we lost, but for what we almost found too late. Ella sat with me, her hand wrapped around mine, her own eyes red and swollen. We didn't speak. We just held the silence. Together. Weeks passed. Ella sold her bookstore and moved back to my town. She bought a little house a few blocks from mine. We spent our days drinking tea, tending to a small garden, going on long walks, and reading in the sun. Sometimes we talked about him. Sometimes we didn't. But we always felt him. In the quiet moments. In the gentle wind. In the way we'd glance at the stars and wonder if he was finally at peace. One day, I visited the willow tree again, a fresh bouquet of lilies in hand. I sat by his grave and whispered, "You left a mess, Harlan, but you gave us a story, a reason to heal. Maybe that's enough." The wind rustled the branches above me, and for the first time in 41 years, I didn't feel abandoned. I felt whole.